Hello, a brief word in Jude, verses number 11, 12, and 13. We're going to see that God is really just, through Jude, just taking the cover off of a whole lot of stuff in the context of a church congregation, in the context of a fellowship. Jude is saying, be careful. I'm going to give you a profile of what they look like, of these people that I've warned you about, these people that have crept in unaware, these people who have taught you to just live any kind of lifestyle and it's okay. These individuals, verses number 11, 12, and 13, Jude is kind of giving us a profile of what they look like. He says, they go in the lifestyle of Cain. They try to eliminate those who God is elevating. Instead of mimicking and following after their faith, following them in how they find God and discover God or are intimate with God, instead of doing that, they will discount those individuals and they will try to kill those individuals. And Genesis chapter number 4 tells us that Cain and Abel were out in the field. They were out in the field, just talking and just having a conversation, seemingly communicating. That is an indication, that's a red flag to let us know that all communication is not coming from the heart. That all communication is not really depicting and really opening up and really sharing what's going on inside a person. Some communication is political. Some communication is strategic. Some communication is tactical. It is just making us people that are vulnerable and open and less resistant and less protected when our enemy, who is the one who is familiar with us, in this case, Cain and Abel are brothers, decides to lift up their hands against us. It is subtle. It is really subtle, the way of Cain. And he goes out in a place where they normally would hang out at. And then he lifts up his hand against them. And here we have, what's the bottom line? These people that resist to be led or resist to be in a place of humbling themselves so that they can be blessed by the same methodology that you yourself were blessed. They would rather kill you and spill your blood and spill your life and discredit your reputation and cause you to be looked at as nothing in the eyes of other people. They would rather to do that. They would rather to lift up their hands against God's imagery, against God's likeness, and thus violate someone than to follow that person into blessing. What's going on the inside of a person that would make them want to do that? What's going on inside a person, inside their minds, inside their consciousness, that would make them feel that it's better for me to kill a person, literally, and also in some cases metaphorically or spiritually or figuratively, than to actually just follow after their lead? It's self-love. It's self-love. I believe in me. I lift me up for all that's in the world. It's the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and pride of life. Most of the time, when we have these bad moments, it's because our flesh is not under control. And here, the Bible says, don't follow after the lifestyle of Cain. That lifestyle will make you eligible and vulnerable to kill someone, not only figuratively, but worst case scenario, literally. And ran, it's right here in your word, verse number 11, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam. What is the greed of Balaam? Greed of Balaam is that I'll do anything for money. I'll do anything for money. And the only reason why Balaam did not curse the people of God in Numbers chapter number 22 and through 24 is because of the fact that God stood in his way. And the donkey that he was riding, the ass that he was riding, would not cooperate and go to where he was directing him because he was invited by Balak. And the donkey said, I'm not going. Mm-mm. And it was a very narrow place, and the donkey just leaned against the wall and trapped him and said, no. And God allowed the donkey to speak. He said, why are you doing this to me? I'm paraphrasing. Don't you see that I've always obeyed you? There has to be a reason why I'm not obeying you now. And then the Bible says his eyes, Balaam's eyes were open, and he saw the angel of the Lord's poised to do some damage to him because of the fact that he was going by the invite of Balak to do some damage to the children of Israel. And the only reason why he did not say anything against the people of God, it wasn't because he was a godly man. It was because he feared his life. He had an awakening. He feared his life and said, nope, not going to do that. I'll do anything else, but I'm not going to speak against those people because I know what I saw and I know what I heard. And so here we see the greed of Balaam caused for him to give advice, though. It said the son of Beor, and they came together and married. Consequently, is now the children of God are compromised because what's the number one commandment? Thou shalt have no other God before me. So now the covenant agreement is no longer in check. Now they're no longer protected. Now the enemy can advance against them. And so, of course, under the direction of Moses, they eliminated all those people that actually brought evil. That's the term they use. Brought evil into the assembly. And he said Balaam was greedy. Jews said Balaam was greedy, and he was eliminated. I believe it's in Numbers chapter number 31. He was eliminated later on with the rest of the Midianites. God told them, you know what, we got some unfinished business with Midian, so I want you to go and handle that. And he was eliminated. Balaam was eliminated. And so if you follow after your greed, if you'll do anything for money, if you'll do anything for the lust of your flesh, the lust of your eyes, and the pride of life, you're going to find yourself being compromised and find yourself at the end of the day receiving a reward that is equated to the reward that the angels received that left their first estate. Then he tells us about Korah. And he got in his mind, him and his hundreds, got in his mind that they were going to rebel against Aaron and Moses. Yeah. And they came and confronted them and said, you know what? God just don't speak to you. God just doesn't speak to Moses. God just doesn't speak to Aaron. God just doesn't, he uses all of us. Isn't that what we hear sometimes? God just doesn't use the pastor. God just doesn't use the prophet. He doesn't use the evangelist just only. He doesn't use the pastor teacher. He uses all of us. Nobody can tell us what to do. You can't tell us what to do, Moses. You can't. And notice that Moses wasn't trying to tell them what to do. Matter of fact, on many occasions, we see that Moses is like, man, 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 really? Really? He goes and pleads for them. He asks for God's mercy upon them. God said they're stiff-necked people. I've already seen these people. They're stiff-necked people. They're not going to do right. I know. I've already seen these people. Let me make a nation unto yourself, Moses. No, God, don't. No, God, you don't want the people, the surrounding nations, to see that you brought us out here just to kill us. How would that make you look? And so he pleads continually for these people who are led by Korah. I mean, they have a good job. They're operating for God. They've been set aside for God. But no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. He puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. So he can't tell me what to do. No, it's not Moses that's telling you what to do. It's God using Moses. And you're so focused in on Moses that you miss that this is God's economy. This is how God speaks to you. This is how God speaks to me. By a person. Through a person. He says, don't come like they do. And the Bible says that those who followed him, the hundreds who followed him, and their families, got swallowed up. The earth opened up, and the earth closed back up. And they were gone. He says, don't do that. So, in summary, verse number 11, don't follow after Cain, trying to kill those who you refuse to follow. Don't follow after Balaam, doing anything for greed, anything for money. Will talk against God's people, will curse God's people for money. And the only reason why he didn't do it is because God affronted him and said, don't you do that. But he still found a way to compromise the people of God. Don't be like Korah, that followed after rebellion or instigated rebellion against the man of God. He said, God don't just use you. God just don't use Aaron. He uses all of us. In verse number 12 and 13, he says, these people are like spots in your feast of charity. They're like reefs in the ocean that ships come in against them unnoticed. Nobody sees them. They're hypocrites. They're comfortable among the saints. You'll never know it. They'll never give themselves away. Not on purpose. They're comfortable around us. They're feeling pretty good as long as they're serving themselves. Instead of at the Feast of Charity, it's about serving one another. But no. They're comfortable. They're comfortable. And they're set up to destroy. They're set up to destroy, just like reefs, just like rocks in the sea that are undisclosed, that are unnoticed. And your ship goes and hits one of the rocks and they're destroyed. That's just how these people are. They're feeding themselves without fear. In other words, they're feeding themselves without any worry about me being a hypocrite. No conscience. They're clouds without water. They're unstable. They don't have any stability. They talk a good game. They talk that they'll, if you listen to me, you'll be refreshed. But the interesting thing is that you're not being produced to be more like God. And you're not following, you're not finding yourself flourishing under their teaching. They're like winds that drive these clouds. Some expositors say they're like demonic influences because the principalities, the powers of the air, demonic influences that drive these clouds from one place to another place unstable. Never can you put your hand on them. Never can you put your thumb on them. They're not accountable. They're just going where the harvest is good. They're going where the sheep are vulnerable. Trees who don't produce fruit, but they don't produce fruit. It's their season, but they don't produce because they're dead. Not just dead, they're dead. They're twice plucked up by the roots. In other words, they are at a place where they're not hooked up to the vine and they're not able to produce that which will bring fruit or evidence that God is living on the inside of them. The raging waters, verse number 13, raging waters of the sea, foaming out of their own shame. They have unrest. They're people that continually light the water. They'll come and they'll make a lot of noise. They'll hit the beach. And when the tide is out, they'll have a residue that's left. They will have a stain that's left on the beach, on the rocks. They're not only raging waters of the sea, foaming out of their own shame, leaving residue of wickedness, but wandering stars all over the place. Today they're here, tomorrow they're there. They're never orderly, in other words. Wandering stars are like wandering planets, not staying in order, not staying in the orbit, not staying in their place, always finding themselves out of place, and they have a faith that is left up to the wicked, a fate that is destined for the wicked. Verse number 6 says, talking about the angels, they left their first estate, and they ended up to a place that is reserved. Their destiny is a place that is reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. At the end of the day, we don't want to be what Jude is describing, and we don't want to follow those that he's describing, because their fate also compromised in the end. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. May he keep you in the center of his most holy will.